What if the next 18 months redefine how Canada trades, defends, and even thinks about itself, while Ottawa quietly posts a rare bit of good news on community safety? It's Wednesday, February 4th, 2026, and here's what's on our radar in Ottawa and across Canada. First, a quick check of today's weather. Expect a high near -5 degrees Celsius and a low around -15 degrees Celsius. Sunny. Let's start local. Ottawa police say reported hate crimes dropped 23% in 2025 compared to 2024. That's still well above pre-2020 levels, and police caution underreporting remains a real concern, especially with global tensions spilling into local communities. But after a quadrupling from 2019 to 2023, any sustained downturn matters. It gives space for schools, faith groups, and community organizations to keep building those bridges, and for police to keep improving reporting pathways and trust. Nationally, the RCMP is seeing momentum where it badly needed some. Applications to become Mounties have doubled from the previous fiscal year. That's welcome news given long-standing staffing and retention problems flagged by the Management Advisory Board, which warned recruitment shortfalls could threaten public safety. More applicants doesn't fix overnight issues on training capacity, postings, or workloads, but it's a vital first step. Zooming out to the big file that touches everything from auto jobs in Ontario to produce prices in Gatineau, the Canada-US-Mexico agreement is up for a mandatory review in 2026. Public consultations have already started south of the border, and President Trump's administration is openly calling CUSMA a transitional deal. Washington we're ready to renegotiate. Canada's Trade Minister Dominic LeBlanc plans high-level talks in January to set the table. Remember, this relationship is like an iceberg. The visible stuff, tariffs, headlines, is just the tip. Beneath the surface are integrated supply chains, certification regimes, and regulators who keep goods moving. Any push to reshore or realign trade will create winners and losers across border towns, farms, factories, and ports. For Ottawa businesses, that means it's time to audit your exposure, from inputs to certifications, and get loud during consultations. That's exactly the message Conservative MP Jamil Javani is carrying on a trip to Washington this week. Javani, a Yale Law classmate of U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance, says he's ready to help restart trade talks if Prime Minister Mark Carney wants the assist. After 4 unanswered emails to the PMO and senior Liberals, he's meeting industry players and attending the National Prayer Breakfast. He's also warning against the kind of unforced errors that derailed past efforts. Remember that Ontario ad that ticked off the Trump White House during a prior negotiation? Whether or not Javani gets an official brief, his outreach is a signal. Ottawa's private sector should be lining up its asks now. On defense, the Canadian military is in Texas for an F-35 milestone, while the politics around that purchase keep heating up. Canada has ordered 16 F-35s, with a decision pending on another 72 as part of the $27 billion CF-18 replacement program. The backdrop: U.S. tariff threats, questions around Canadian aviation certification, and even warnings, later walked back, about possible changes to NORAD if Canada limits its F-35 buy. There's also a strategic thread linking Arctic security and Greenland to missile defense plans tied to President Trump's Golden Dome concept. For Ottawa, that's not abstract. NORAD modernization, Arctic domain awareness, and the industrial benefits tied to F-35 work all flow through this decision. Expect tough trade-offs between budget discipline, industrial participation, and alliance politics. Meanwhile, the auto sector is quietly undergoing a generational flip. A new report shows the Detroit Three's share of Canadian production has fallen from 56% in 2016 to 23% last year. Honda and Toyota now account for 77% of vehicles made here and over 60% of assembly jobs. Ottawa is considering reviving consumer incentives for electric vehicles after the IZEV program ran out of funds, as part of a national auto strategy focused on scaling Canadian-built cars, especially EVs, and improving market access. For climate goals, incentives help pull demand. For the economy, the bigger prize is securing end-to-end value chains, from batteries to final assembly, to weather the next CUSMA rewrite. weather remains a moving target across the country. Environment Canada has lifted severe cold alerts for the GTA after wind chills near -30 and is flagging freezing rain risks around Fort Nelson, where a warm front could turn surfaces treacherous. Here in Ottawa, we're spared the extreme swings today, but it's a reminder. Conditions can flip fast in February, and ice is the great equalizer. Over to Toronto municipal politics, because big city budgets have a way of setting templates. Mayor Olivia Chow is proposing her lowest property tax increase yet, at 2.2%, framing it as an affordability play. To get there, the budget leans on reserves and defers capital work while keeping TTC and police funding up, and counts on revenue from taxes on speculators and luxury buyers. The province says no new revenue tools are coming, and the city is staring at a $1.1 billion pressure next year once reserves are gone. Chow isn't saying yet whether she'll run again in October. For Ottawa, watch the reactions at Queen's Park and Bay Street. Those late budget fights often echo here, from transit operating dollars to housing accelerators. On national identity, two former prime ministers, Stephen Harper and Jean Chrétien, shared a rare stage to argue for Canadian unity as separatist currents re-emerge in Alberta and Quebec. Harper distanced himself from a petition calling for an Alberta referendum, while Chrétien warned about pressures from the United States and the need to stand guard. He also mused about a shifting geopolitical order, perhaps the decline of the American empire, while President Trump has, at times, voiced the idea of making Canada the 51st state. Whether you take that as provocation or positioning, the message from both ex-PMs was clear. Fractured politics weakens Canada's hand abroad, especially with a CUSMA review and defense bargaining underway. Sports time. The Maple Leafs have strung together back-to-back wins to open their Western Road swing, 4-2 over the Flames, behind William Nylander's 18th of the year, plus a 28-save night from Joseph Woll, who's now 5-0 against Calgary. They followed that with a 5-2 victory in Edmonton, capitalizing on a 5-on-3 where John Tavares and Matias Maccelli both scored. Penalties hurt the Oilers, and Toronto's within 7 points of Boston for the second wildcard spot in the East. Not the update Sens fans may relish, but scoreboard watching season is here. Stateside college hoops, the High Point Panthers roll into Winthrop, chasing an 11th straight win. The Eagles are tough at home and score more than High Point usually allows. Keep an eye on Aaliyah Collins facilitating for High Point and Amory Porter leading Winthrop's offense. First meeting between these two in conference play this season. Before we go, a practical takeaway. If you run an Ottawa area business, the intersection of trade, defense procurement, and auto policy is not a distant Ottawa-Washington story. It's compliance costs, timelines for getting parts, and which models where customers can actually buy. Get your input into the CUSMA consultations. Talk to your industry associations about EV incentives and market access, and keep an eye on defense industrial participation if you're in aerospace or advanced manufacturing. That's it for today. Sunny skies, a brisk high of -5 degrees Celsius, and a low near -15 degrees Celsius. Stay warm, stay kind, and we'll be back tomorrow with more Ottawa First, Canada Always.